Let me just do a quick search. Yeah, maybe by the end of today we'll know. Something to talk about tomorrow, I suppose. Also, folks, if you haven't done so already and want to participate in this week's movie, make sure you join the Discord and head on over and vote for your favorite category, and we'll play a movie based on that category that's appropriate. So please feel free to stop in there and hang out if you want to and watch the movie, or use the Discord as a way to keep up with the channel. Also, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the YouTube, like the stream, do all that awesome stuff, and we'll get started. I think we should probably start with this.
I was a champion for Joe Biden until October 7th. I feel he's disowned us, disenfranchised us with his stance on Gaza.
Well, I can't say that I'm surprised. So CBS's Face the Nation with host Margaret Brennan spoke to several Michigan voters and their thoughts on Joe Biden. And even though Brennan only spoke to 5 Michigan voters here, at least 2 of them in the clip they shared brought up Biden's position on Israel and Gaza, and that being the reason why they can't vote for him. So I'm going to get to a couple of clips from this. I'm also going to get to a clip later from Biden's own John Kirby, not to be confused with Nintendo's own Kirby, and a clip from late last week that really set me off. And I'm also going to share some more data around how Biden is doing in Michigan, because this is not...
Yeah, Michigan is going to be a problem. And the thing is, like, Michigan is an important state. And, yeah, Trump is, as usual, very proud of himself. Not every Republican voter loves him, but at least 45% have not changed their mind about Trump and might change or not. I doubt it. Like, I think at this point, like, most people's minds are made up. I think it's a pretty solid guess, or a pretty solid assumption that once, at this point in time, like, whatever people's feelings are towards, like, who they're going to vote for or not going to vote for, I think it's pretty solid, right? Especially around Trump. Like, at this point, it's not unambiguous. We're not dealing with, like, a wild card here. Trump support is Trump support, and that's not going to change. Really, what it comes down to is a question of how much mobilization can the Democratic Party do, and how much anti-Trump sentiment remains in contrast with Biden's poor numbers.
An isolated thing. This, yes, this is 5 people in this interview, but this is a good example of how this issue is affecting Joe Biden with voters who, I'm not going to call them swing voters because these people are not going to vote for Donald Trump. The issue that Biden has is lack of enthusiasm.
Right. Like these people, like the interviews that he's going to, the interviews that he's going over, like, they're not going to go and vote for Trump. They're just going to stay home. But nobody should guarantee anything yet. There's still time before even September. What are you talking about? You mean like the primary? I'm talking strictly like on Trump's base. I think it's a pretty solid guess, or I think it's a pretty good assumption that essentially we can garner, we can put 2 and 2 together. That Trump support is Trump support. That's not much is going to change there, right? Now, if it was September of 2024 before most votes are counted, when? I'm not understanding. You're gonna have to rephrase that. Cosmopolitics rating with a party of 13. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Folks, if you haven't done so, please go follow twitch.tv/cosmopolitics. Let me give a quick shout out. Thank you. If you enjoy your content, if you enjoy your stay here, hit the follow button, okay? It really does help us out. Thank you. Again, twitch.tv/cosmopolitics. If you haven't done so, go please show some support. Please go also follow her on Twitter as well. Zayday420, thank you. All I'm saying is that I think it's pretty solid to assume that Trump's base is going to be Trump's base. The people who are not going to vote for Trump, they're not going to vote for him. But this way, I feel September 2024, if Trump can delay all trials before November. Yeah, I don't. You're going to have to expand on that. I'm not sure what the significance of the September date is, unless I'm missing something. Excuse me. Unless I'm missing something. Is the September date like the end of the primary? No, that can't be, right? The primary can't end 2 months before the election. Hold on. Oh, the primary is in June. The primary ends in June, so that can't be. He won't be able to delay that long. DC trial is in March. Yeah, that's true. And I don't know what the trials even have to do. Honestly, like if anything, like the trials are just like essentially like campaign propaganda for Trump. That's what these trials are going to end up. If the trials like go through some of the campaign through the election, all it is just like propaganda for Trump, right? He's the victim, he's the martyr, and that's why the good patriots must support him and defeat the radical left, whatever, you know. So I don't know.
Biden needs people to
The radical left is trying to take away your favorite president, me.
come out to vote for him. This issue is animating enough people who would vote for Biden, but animating them in the wrong direction to not vote at all.
Tassin, you did change your mind
Yes.
on the president. Why?
I was a champion for Joe Biden until October 7th. I feel he's disowned us, disenfranchised us with his stance on Gaza.
What do you mean by that?
He's not listening to us. We are asking for a ceasefire at this time. It's a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. Too many lives are being lost at this time. I was never a single issue voter. In fact, I used to argue with people not to be single issue voters, but for me, this is a deal breaker. Way too many lives have been lost.
When you say us, you're Muslim. Is that what
Yes.
you
And the thing is, like, yeah, like David Dole said, this may only be a handful of people, but he's not the only one who feels this way, okay? He's not the only one who thinks this way.
mean? You think the Muslim community here feels as you do?
Yes, I think a vast majority of Muslims, Arab Americans, even progressives who I identify myself as a progressive, and many people that I talk to in my circles are not going to be voting for Joe Biden.
Let's say for whatever reason you don't care about the lives of Palestinians.
Butcher Biden, what? Yeah, this is in Michigan, by the way. Welcome, Michael Hassner. Delegates are divided into two main groups. Most are pledged or bound to represent the wishes of the voters from their party in their home state. The rest are not. They can vote however they choose. At the you're talking about the you're talking about the primary? This sounds like the primary process. The national? No, you're talking about a convention. Are you confusing the primary process? Or am I the one that's wrong here? I don't know. But you can't put the faith on the electoral college, because the electoral college is going to determine be determined by the swing states, which are determined by the popular vote. Right? The swing states who hold the power really in the electoral college, those votes are made by whoever is the wins the popular vote in those states. Yeah, this is all about the primary. This your link is all about the primary. if I'm understanding correctly. Biden's going to lose Michigan. Most likely he can't afford to lose swing states. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you literally cannot afford to lose swing states. Is New Hampshire a swing state? I don't think so. He's lost Michigan, Georgia, and North Carolina. If that's true, then that's we're in trouble, folks. Is New Hampshire a swing state? I don't think so. Oh wait. Yeah, it is a swing state. It is a swing state. You lost Michigan, Georgia, and North Carolina. Yeah, what you're sending me is a link to how the primary works. New Hampshire is usually blue. They sometimes hold primary. To understand primaries, it's easier to begin at the end when both Democrats and Republicans officially nominate their presidential candidates. This occurs every 4 years at vast national conventions. Yeah, there's no conventions in like an actual election. The national conventions they're talking about the RNC and the DNC conventions. So I'm pretty sure this applies to the conventions. New Hampshire's usually blue. I was reading that it was supposedly a swing state. I could be wrong on that one. I could be wrong. Welcome, Bipedal Meatbag, Declassified Crocs.
You don't care that Biden is helping to fund the bombing of innocent civilians in Gaza. Maybe you care about Trump not winning again. Maybe you care about ensuring that democracy has someone in power who at least acknowledges elections. If you care, then you should be engaged on this issue. You should care that that Joe Biden is on the wrong side of this, on the clear wrong side of this. And you have people here pointing out just how they feel. You could argue with them and say Trump is worse, it'd be worse under Trump, and you would be right. But when this is happening now, and the man in charge is not even just allowing it to happen, but funding it, you can't deny how these people feel. And this goes to what Matt does here, put on Twitter. So we can argue all day that Trump is worse, and he is, but we need to understand that for a lot of people, withholding their vote is the last tool they feel they have toward a president who simply refuses to hear them. So, I've always argued that, at least more recently, in the past several years, that voting should be used as a tool. It is simply a tool you have, and when interacting with democracy, with that, one of the few tools you have in a democracy is voting. When utilizing that vote, it's important to understand that it is simply a tool. It does not represent your feelings on every issue. It should not represent how you feel. You shouldn't feel like if the person you voted for did something wrong, that somehow you're at fault for voting for them. No, it's simply a tool that you can use. And in a democracy, I would hope that most people would use that tool to ensure that the worst thing doesn't happen. Now, if you're in a strong democracy, hopefully you can vote for someone who you really feel passionate about, and that's great. But in a lot of cases, that isn't going to be the choice. It's simply going to be one of the tools you use to simply say, I don't want the worst outcome here. That doesn't mean you get a good outcome. That means you avoid the worst outcome. I could argue that all day. It's not going to change the minds of voters like this who understand that what Biden is supporting here is atrocious. And he can't get over that. And the people he knows can't get over that. And I completely empathize with that. I understand that. You can't argue your way out of this.
Yeah.
I can't argue with him out of his position.
Right.
I can present my ideas, present my arguments. It doesn't make a difference. This is why ultimately this ends with Joe Biden.
Yeah, and again, just to be very clear, like it is incumbent upon the Democratic Party to want to make people want to go out and vote for them. Otherwise, what the heck is the point? I did some research. NH is more of a rock state, specifically granted. I know many Massachusetts people commute every day to New Hampshire or have their permanent house in New Hampshire.
And their decision to continue supporting a far right-wing genocidal government in Israel. Now,
if you want the performance of stainless steel, the versatility of cast iron, and the convenience of non-stick, then you want Hexclad.
Yeah, I don't know if
I also want to show...
I don't even want to know how much those pans cost.
You just... This is...
Also, why am I getting ads for pans? Okay.
Issue is animating for people, or animates people who are engaged on it. Meaning, if you don't care either way, you're not gonna like...
Around 250 to 450 a pan? Nah, I'm good. Thank you. I mean, like, honestly, like, professional pans cost a lot, like, cost around that much, but, like, geez.
I want to show you this person, the next voter here that Brennan speaks to.
Kathy, how do you feel about this issue?
Well, I feel like it's really a difficult issue, but I'm glad we have someone like Biden with his wisdom and experience trying to decide how to handle this. I believe that I like when he says things like Israel has the right to defend itself and
go to a thrift store that sells cookware. True. You know, not a bad idea. I like that Biden says that Israel has a right to defend itself. Does it look like Israel's defending itself? Because, yeah, propaganda is a thing. Like, imagine being so propagandized that, like, you are watching, well, I don't know if she's specifically her watching, but, like, you can literally see, you can search for this. It's not hidden. Just exactly how much devastation and is going on in Gaza, and then being like, yes, this is Israel defending itself. I was reading the coolest facts about New Hampshire and fell asleep halfway through. Israel's an occupying force. They actually don't have the right to defend themselves. Yeah, and even if you are like under the weird mindset that this has anything to do with it defending itself, does it look like it's defending itself? Does it look like Israel is defending itself? Because to me, it looks like it's just flattening the whole place off. And like the other, just earlier, I read that like Netanyahu's government, or Netanyahu and the people around him, had like this plan to literally ship out Palestinian people to a freaking island. Like, are you serious right now? Whenever the discussion again about voting and withholding one's vote, it's time to drag out that few second Lawrence O'Donnell video. Yeah. There's questions, and does the RNC and DNC know the General Electoral College vote numbers or the gap? Well, what they should be paying attention to is getting people to vote for them, right? That's what you need to do. The Democratic Party's only primary directive right now is to make sure that people show up. And if they care about like the Electoral College strategy, then they need to make sure that people show up in swing states like Michigan, where this is happening. That's what their primary directive needs to be.
to do what it needs to do to protect its citizens from Hamas. I think he stresses.
If that's true, then why does, like, again, this is like how badly propagandized we are here. By Israel's own admission, by the way, this is like the Israeli government and our own government admitting this. There's like, at the most conservative number, it's like 70% of Hamas is perfectly fine in terms of fighting force. If you want to play it, I have a timestamp. Sweet. Yeah.
If you don't show them you're capable of not voting for them, they don't have to listen to you. I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything on the left while I was working in the Democratic Party because the left had nowhere to go.
Yeah, can we rewind
If
that?
you want to pull
I know two Zoom groups and they want more people voting than 81 million votes against Trump in 2024. Well, it doesn't look like it, because like the actual populace, the actual constituency, is not happy with you. Okay, the actual constituency is not happy with you, and I'm saying you as the Democratic Party. Let me rephrase that. The constituency is not happy with the Democratic Party. The constituency is not happy with Biden.
the party, the major party that is closest to the way you're thinking, to what you're thinking. You must show them that you're capable of not voting for them.
Because the way the Democratic Party is run now for quite a number of presidential cycles is they pick a nominee in a kind of half-assed process that doesn't really represent much of anybody, and then they tell everybody to just shut up. Don't bring up anything that will complicate life for your nominee. You know he's not for you on this. Why badger him? He's not going to be for you for reasons that you don't understand but are good.
Yeah, and like what's really frustrating is that this isn't even new, and people pretend like, you know, and people pretend like this is like some kind of a temper tantrum that the childish left-wing people are throwing. Yeah, okay, dudes.
Reasons. Shut up. Turn off your brains.
If you don't show them you're capable of not voting for them, they don't have to listen to you. I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything.
Right, because like I mean, even if you know, this is not just a thing limited to the Democratic Party. It's just a natural progression of how things work. If your constituency just keeps voting for you unconditionally, then you don't really have to listen to them because you're there expecting them to show up. But that's not how this works. That's not how this works at all. It's the opposite. You need to go chase down your constituents. You need to go and cater to your constituents who you need to get out there and vote for you. That's how this works. That's how a representative democracy, a representative republic is supposed to work, because you're supposed to be represented by the effectively your liaison, right? Like that's how this works. We vote for you. You represent us because we vote for you, not the other way around.
On the left, while I was working in the Democratic Party, because the left had nowhere to go.
Also true. They haven't learned from 2016. They raised a lot of money after 2016.
That Israel's got to be really careful not to commit war crimes.
But they are committing war crimes.
I think he's been really clear on that.
They got to be really careful not to commit war crimes. I'm just showing you this because this is somebody who is just parroting what the Democratic Party is saying. Doesn't really appear to be all that engaged. Doesn't actually, she goes on to say that he can't do any more.
I just don't know what else he can do. I think people think he has more power over Netanyahu than he does.
Yeah, okay. Biden and the party are chasing the right. That's a silly mistake to do. Like, how silly of a strategy would that be? If that's the Democratic Party's strategy, it's done. Like, might as well call the election right now. If the Democratic Party's strategy is to chase the right, they're done. They're done. They're done because Republicans or the right is not going to vote for you. I can say from CBS Face the Nation usually has Republicans on. Well, these aren't Republicans. I don't know what that has to do with anything. We're talking about Democrats, Democratic voters. These are Democratic voters, or purportedly Democratic voters.
Complete BS. Biden is sending weapons to Israel. Money, weapons, support. Unconditional support. Clearly unconditional support. This idea that Biden can't do anything. The U.S. is Israel's #1 ally. Of course he can do something. He can put an end to the support, at the very least. So, but my point in showing that is that, what's her name, Kathy? She's not going to change her vote if Biden decides tomorrow to finally wake up and cut aid to Israel. Kathy's not going to be like, oh, screw Joe Biden, I'm voting for Trump, or I'm going to stay home. Kathy's engaged on other issues. Like, I think she talks about, abortion rights, which of course another very important issue. But this is not a motivating issue for her. For people who are motivated by this,
yeah, they'll stay home. Lindsey G, this has nothing to do with Lindsey Graham. This is Democratic voters expressing their opinion. Barring any unforeseen or unexpected circumstances, we need to come to terms that Biden is already cooked and it's over.
I should be clear. For Democratic voters who are motivated by this issue, this is only hurting Joe Biden. It's only hurting him. There is nobody supporting Joe Biden because he is supporting Israel. There's not a single, maybe there's one or two people, but if you care that much about funding a genocidal right-wing government, you're voting Republican. You're voting for Donald Trump. You're not, whatever, Biden's position on this doesn't matter to you. Biden is losing a lot of people he would otherwise get, which is especially younger voters. The reason why he won in 2020, he's losing a lot of those voters because of his right-wing position on this.
Yeah, and it's not just younger voters. It's not just the left-wing people, too. If Trump wins, it'll be 6 more weeks of winter. No. So Trump is president, basically. We have to hope that Trump has a stroke. Like, we shouldn't be basing our strategy on whether or not Trump kicks the bucket. Like, if that's the Democratic Party's strategy, that they hope that like, okay, realistically, the Democratic Party, like, being honest, just with no memes, the Democratic Party's strategy is basically hoping that enough negative partisanship comes out and votes against Trump. And the fallback plan is that an act of God happens, and that's it. That's the Democratic Party's strategy. It's negative partisanship. It's not a good one. That's not a good one. I'm already resigned to writing in Sean Fain. There's several months, if still is September. The numbers need to start changing now. The actions from the administration needs to start changing now. Not September, because if we're still having this conversation in September, it's done. You know that, right? If we're having this conversation and Biden is still in the same position now in September, it's done. There's nothing you can do in 2 months to turn that around. It's done. That's why the actions needed to start yesterday. The actions needed to start yesterday. Why do you think I've been talking about this? September is too close for a new strategy by either party. Exactly. So why are we even mentioning September? Why are we waiting for that time? It's too late. The time to act is now. The time to start turning things around is now. There's no point in having a conversation in September. Like we just wait around until September and then take another. Like no, it's too late. It's done. The time to act was after January 6th. True. Honestly, true. But you know, you get the point. It's difficult. It's a difficult truth to face. Yes, I said the thing, but we're facing the reality that this was over before it's over. Maybe. Maybe. That may be the case. That may be the case.
And I want to get to, I guess, an example of one of those younger voters here. This is another clip from that discussion.
Saba, you said reproductive rights are a huge factor for you, but that you probably won't vote for President Biden.
I think it would be hypocritical of me to use reproductive rights as a way to justify voting for Biden when Biden is aiding and sending military aid to Israel, which is airstriking Gaza and blocking humanitarian aid, leading to women there who are pregnant, either getting C-sections without anesthesia, not being able to be provided with prenatal care.
It's interesting that, just to button this up, you are not very excited about the Democratic candidate. But I saw the both of you are excited, but I saw the both of you jump when we talked about reproductive access. That is something that's going to make you show up to vote, even though you're kind of on the candidate?
I think so. I mean, I'm certainly a frustrated Democrat at the moment, I would say.
So there is somebody who is voting for Joe Biden there at the end and still not excited about it. Somebody who, I guess, from the clip shared online, doesn't appear to be engaged on the issue in Gaza, but is engaged on reproductive rights and isn't too happy to vote for Joe Biden, even though she will. And then, again, the younger voter there I showed you, supporting Joe Biden, or not supporting Joe Biden, I should say, because of his stance in Israel. I saw this last week, the end of last week. And so I did a video on Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's recent comments discussing how Israel is going to control all the land from the river to the sea. That phrase, from the river to the sea, has...
Yeah, the genocidal phrase. I'm curious as to what they're expecting Biden to do about abortion, the second term that he's not doing now. Right, and that's, presuming that he has Congress, which he probably won't. I mean, more than just this race, broader in terms of this current malfunctioning democratic system, because for it even to get to this point, we're in a no-win panic cope mode. It's been an objective failure. Well, I'm not going to disagree. I'm not going to disagree. It's a completely unresponsive, ossified party and system. Yeah. He had Congress for the first 2 years. Yeah, by a hair, and they decided, just like in the Obama administration's years, they just decided that's not a priority. Yeah.
Has been used to smear people on the left who are arguing for equal rights for Palestinians and Israelis in a one-state solution. But when Netanyahu used it, at that time I questioned, how does the White House feel about Netanyahu using it when they criticize Rashida?
Yeah, and this is so frustrating because, like, the press, the media should be asking the Biden administration about this every chance they get. Like, hey, man, your buddy, your boy Netanyahu, just literally said you guys made a statement on this. You guys made a statement on this that you unequivocally denounced the phrase "from the river to the sea." He just used it. You just said not that long ago that this was a genocidal phrase. Are we gonna call like a spade a spade? Is he engaging in genocidal apologia or whatever? Yeah. No, Biden has the Senate, not Congress. At GOP MAGA at thin margin. Yeah, he had Congress. He had both the House and the Senate. Remember, in 2020? The key on abortion is to have Democratic presidents, so they will veto any attempt at a U.S.-wide abortion ban on federal level, which is a really low bar. Yeah, well, imagine that. Imagine that's where we're at. I mean, I will say this. At the very least, I think that I think it's possible that the House might switch hands. It is a possibility. I don't know how much of a possibility, but it is a possibility. A lot of people still have faith. A lot of people still have a full faith in electoralism saving the day. Yeah, that's misplaced, in my opinion. While, obviously, if you can, engage in the system, there are plenty of opportunities for you to have a positive impact when it comes to ballot initiatives, when it comes to ballot initiatives and constitutional amendments for each state. Well, I think they're like almost the same thing, right? Like ballot initiatives. That's really where you can put strength, especially when it comes to reproductive rights. That has been unbelievably successful. I think it's every single ballot measure, ballot initiative that has abortion rights on it has won, and won with a good margin too. Every single ballot initiative when it comes to reproductive rights and abortion rights has won. The Senate is gone? Possibly. I'm not going to count on the Senate. Republicans narrowly recaptured control of the U.S. House in the 2020 midterms. No, it was when Biden came first into office. He had the Democratic House. After on the 2022 midterms, it flipped.
Tlaib, who had used it, again, for equal rights. Netanyahu using it in terms of complete destruction. Very clear. Well, we got our answer late Friday.
Did the president address Netanyahu's use of the phrase?
Oh shoot, they did ask. I'll be damned. I'm eating my my words here. No matter who we get, we're marching into fascism because we're lurching more to the right, either by direct with the GOP or by proxy by enabling of the Dems. Sadly, I tend to agree, because while Dems in power means like while Dems in power mean that, fascism is slowed, it is not stopped. F. Kirby, I hate this man so much. The Secretary of State, the John Kirby guy, President Biden was sworn in on 2021. He had a Democratic House. He had a Democratic House at the beginning of his presidency, before the 2022 midterms. I think he's the national security spokesperson. Got it.
It's from the river to the sea. In their conversation today, I know the White House has previously said that phrase is divisive. So
I'm not aware that specific phrase was discussed.
What? Jesus Christ. I'm not. I don't. Who? What phrase? What? Oh man, dude. Sorry, we didn't discuss. Like, I wasn't aware. Bro, are you serious? Look at his face, dude. Dude's playing games, man. Dude's playing games. What a. What a Weasley little liar. Okay? As if we all didn't, like. As if we all didn't hear Netanyahu say the words, okay? And the Republicans took control of the House in January of 2023. Yep. Yeah, unironically gaslighting the whole country. Literally lying, okay? Literally just straight face, like, I'm not aware that we discussed that specific phrase. You see, he didn't use from the river to the sea exactly. That specific phrase wasn't discussed. You know, there was a couple of other words in front and afterwards. Man, shut the F up. What a clown.
Them in using that phrase.
Look, there's a connotation with that phrase. We've talked about this before, but
There's a connotation to that phrase. What connotation? Oh, he's saying that specific phrase wasn't discussed between the White House and Netanyahu. Oh, what a cheap cop-out in that case. I misunderstood him. What a cheap cop-out. The reporter asked you not whether or not it was discussed. It's whether or not you find it a little bit hypocritical. No, that was the gist of the idea.
when you use the phrase "river to the sea," it speaks basically to
what?
The mantra of
To what?
Hamas, and in their manifesto, where they
Didn't the Likud party also have this as part of their platform?
basically describe the geographic bounds of what they believe.
Also, the Likud party having this this phrase as well is describing the geographical bounds as well. What did you think the Likud party was talking about?
To be Palestine. And if you look at it on the map, if you go look at the four corners that they describe.
Bro, like, stop tap dancing around words, dude. If you are going to claim, that from the river to the sea is a genocidal phrase, then Netanyahu is, not beating the genocide accusations, is he? So the question being, what are you going to do about it, and why is this okay when Netanyahu says it? The Likud party is supposed to be the center-right party. Yeah. I can't imagine.
It's basically the state of Israel. They just don't believe it should exist. So again, it's not a phrase that that we recommend using, given because of that context.
But Netanyahu can use it. Question mark? If the claim is that we believe, because like he's dancing around the whole, he took like a minute and a half just to say that like the stance, the White House's stance on the phrase "from the river to the sea" is that it's genocidal. Okay, that's it. That's what he means. That's what he was tap dancing around. But when Netanyahu uses it, it's not genocidal. Like, how do we square that circle? Okay, because you just said that that the White House's position is that this is a genocidal phrase. Netanyahu's using a genocidal phrase. How are we squaring the circle?
This wasn't Hamas. This was Netanyahu.
I understand. I don't have anything more on that, and I certainly don't have anything more on the conversation to read out with respect to that.
Disgusting.
Amazing. I guess, again, I'm not surprised, but it's amazing to hear them not care at all. This is their response to Rashida Tlaib using "river to the sea." When if you watch the video, it's very clear she's discussing equal rights for all, Palestinians and Israelis. If you watch Netanyahu use "river to the sea," it's very clear he's talking about the destruction of Gaza. Yet, they condemn Tlaib for using it in the context of human rights. Netanyahu uses it, I have no further comment on that.
Phenomenal.
Because again, this is about maintaining a relationship with a genocidal maniac. But at the very least, don't condemn the people who are fighting for human rights. It is.
You can't have it both ways, man. You can't have it both ways. This looks really freaking bad.
Expect to bring young people out to vote who are engaged on human rights, who came out to vote for you in 2020. How do you expect to bring them out to vote when you pull shit like this? When you criticize your own, who are the very few who are fighting for the right thing, and turn a blind eye to your ally who is using it to destroy an entire people. Polling, of course, is terrible for Joe Biden. This is from December, but it has continued. Low marks in Israel, particularly from young voters. So overall approval rating is at 37%. It's slightly lower, 33% approving specifically of his handling of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and voters younger than 30, his approval rating stands at 26% overall, and 20% on Israeli-Palestinian.
Yeah, phenomenal numbers here. Sundry clown card. The State Department is like, what are you talking about both ways? It's very easy. Look, a butterfly. I have nothing else to comment on the matter. Oh, would you look at that? Next question.
Conflict. And I'll get to some more data in a second here. I'm not going to show this. It's not worth your time. But basically, Governor Whitmer was asked about voters and how they may protest Joe Biden because of his position on Israel. And she says, yeah, the voters may protest him. But here's some more data. So this is from Morning Consult. Some swing state data. Now, let me get the date on this as well. So also late December or mid-December in this case. But every single swing state.
By the way, this isn't like old data, okay? This is like a month and something ago, okay? And this is what determines the election, the swing states.
Trump is winning. And in some cases, like Nevada, like Michigan, there has been a shift, a gap widening since October 7th. So Michigan here, Trump has really pulled ahead. And again, this is not because people are moving from Biden to Trump. This is because you have people who would be Democratic voters saying they're not going to vote at all, or they're going to vote for a third party candidate because they're not happy with Joe Biden. But like losing every single swing state. Now, this is a capture in time. Things may change. Biden may change. He's incredibly old and stuck in his ways, but he may change. People around him may be like, you got to do something here. But at the same time, he's trying to maintain this relationship with a maniac. So if you prioritize that over the lives of people in Gaza, and I should say the West Bank as well, then you're destroying your future. This issue is not going away. The civilians who have died in Gaza are still going to be dead come November. So even if Biden does a complete 180 on this, I still question his chances just because of the amount of damage he has caused. I want to end on a happy note here. Be like, things are looking up. But right now, it's not. Things are not looking good. Not looking good for those in Gaza. Not looking good politically for where.
You want more Hamas? Because this is how you get more Hamas. Oh, yeah, 100%. Netanyahu needs Hamas. Needs whoever's going to be the next boogeyman, Hezbollah, to maintain his grip on power. In fact, I was just talking about how the intelligence, the American intelligence, and the Israeli government's intelligence said that like 70%, again, this is the most conservative number, 70% of Hamas is perfectly fine. 70% of Hamas's fighting force is perfectly fine and capable. So Netanyahu wants Trump back? Oh, 100%. Trump would take this to the next level. Trump would take this to the next level.
Where Biden stands and the chances of Trump becoming president while being convicted potentially. There's a lot that's up in the air right now, and it is incredibly frustrating to watch all of this happen when you can see what the problem is and know exactly what should have been done to begin with and what can still be done to mitigate further damage, and it's just not happening.
Yep.
Something that's not talked about a lot, but it's very significant, is we set a new contract deadline for May the 1st, 2028, May Day, International Solidarity Day.
Protect this man at all costs, okay? This guy needs to be under 24/7 protection, okay?
We did this for two reasons. I've always thought in my walk as a union rep that September was the worst time in the world to be going out on strike because sales start lagging when we get into the winter months. May made a hell of a lot more sense, but it also made sense to do it in a unified approach. We got to get back to the days, we got to pay for our sins of the past. Back in 1980, when Reagan at the time fired the PATCO workers, everyone in this country should have stood up and walked the hell out.
True. God dang, this guy.
We missed the opportunity then, but we're not going to miss it in 2028. That's the plan. We want a general strike. We want everybody walking out, just like they do in other countries.
Protect this man at all costs, okay? Protect this man at all costs. The dude's just out here trying to, like, push the labor movement to the next level. Now that's a true leader right there. That's a freaking true leader. My beanie's off to that man. Exactly, pull a fein. Sorry for the jump scare there, folks.
But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign. Winston Churchill once remarked that success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts.
A Budweiser ad. This looks like an AI video. It does, doesn't it? It does. He's so robotic.
You heard that right. The campaign of the candidate once hailed as the future is now defunct. Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the 2024 presidential race and endorsed Donald Trump like the bootlicking cuck that he is, and he managed to embarrass himself just one last time by misquoting Winston Churchill. Now, it's not the fake quote that makes this so funny. What makes it especially hilarious is that the quote that he used is actually attributed to Bud Light. As Newsweek explains, a 1939 edition of Life magazine found on Google Books shows the ad from Budweiser, which includes the quote used by DeSantis on Sunday. Newsweek reached out to DeSantis' campaign via email for further comment. The accidental use of the quote by DeSantis comes after
DeSantis' concession speech is so funny. The country sounds at a crossroads. We need to direct to its which is why I'm dropping out and abdicating all choice. Bye. I mean, besides like the whole, Western civilization fascist talk, yeah.
He repeated.
I mean, dude's a professional clown, okay? But then again, fascist kind of goes hand in hand.
Criticized Bud Light and Budweiser's parent company, Anheuser-Busch, after they partnered with Dylan Mulvaney, a transgender influencer and activist. Oh, we know, Newsweek. We know. How ironic. I feel like this is the universe's way of humiliating DeSantis just one last time. Not like he really needed any help, because if
also, like, this dude's probably incapable of feeling shame, okay?
you'll recall, this campaign was a disaster from the very...
Trump isn't president yet? Of course, I could be wrong. Well, it's up to the Democrats, right? And, yeah. Not liking the situation.
Very beginning. And this is because he decided for some reason to launch his campaign during a Twitter Spaces event. Let's look back at how bad that was.
So they just keep crashing, huh? Yeah, I think we've got
a very good website. Very good functioning website that has now basically become indistinguishable from 4chan. Nice website. Good stuff.
Hey, just a massive number of people online, so it's servers are straining somewhat.
Now it's quiet. Honestly, next to me, and we want to welcome you to this historic Twitter Spaces event, and more broadly, a first in the history of social media.
Well, I am running for president of the United States to lead our great American comeback.
That is how Ron DeSantis chose to launch his presidential campaign.
Yeah. We're in a dilemma. We want Trump to lose, yet Haley would be more difficult for Joe. Well, I'm not really like counting Haley for anything because the primary is done. The primary is done. While I understand the sentiment. While I understand the sentiment, Haley's not gonna win. You know, since I've said this since the beginning, it's gonna be a Trump Biden rematch, and it's already gonna be it's difficult. And independent voters, which may stay home because they don't feel very the independent voters, which may stay home because they don't feel like going out to vote for either of these.
I mean, even if everything went smoothly, it'd still be a bizarre choice, but it did not go smoothly, and that kind of set the tone for the entire campaign. And I say this because he became a laughingstock for a number of reasons really quickly. And typically, presidential candidates, they want to go viral, but DeSantis went viral multiple times, albeit for all the wrong reasons. Case in point.
And I will not let you down.
See, humans, I too have emotions.
Jeez. Again, U.S. once old. President's not younger. Not really. The U.S. doesn't want either of these people. The U.S. doesn't want either of these people. Like, I specifically remember going over how people feel about Biden and Trump. Both of them have abysmal approval numbers. Nobody wants them, okay? The US does not want old presidents, much less Biden or Trump. The problem is Trump shit talks Biden and it sticks. Biden plays nice with his rhetoric of Trump. The Democratic Party is lost. They're lost in space, and they don't give a shit about courting their voters. It seems, and they are again about to make the same mistake in 2024. They're going to make the same mistake they did in 2016. Again, the RNC and DNC chooses old presidents, right? Not the U.S. We had no say in this matter. Which is ridiculous and absurd. So again, if that's how it's going to be, then why are we even doing this? Conscious Canuck, welcome.
It's just a lot of people speculated that like that was one of his aides telling him that he needs to smile more. And then him just like not knowing how to do that in a really organic way. So just trying to shoehorn in a smile. And that's the result. It's beautiful. Not his face, but the result. The overall essence of that was beautiful, just hilarious. But while most people probably remember that as the most humiliating moment for DeSantis, I actually think that this moment takes the cake.
Are you the type of person, like I have people around me that love to say, hey, Pat, you got something between your teeth. These are the annoying people in your life, right? Hey, Pat, pull your zipper up. You know, hey, Pat, do this. Hey, pull one of your socks is lower than the other one. I'm sure your marketing team points out how they're trying to troll you in the marketplace. Okay, I'm sure they're doing that. Can you bring this one clip? I know you were on, what do you call it? On, what was it? Bill Maher, and Bill Maher talked about the boots. I've seen you walk with these boots. Go ahead and play this clip. This on TikTok went viral. It doesn't have a million views. It doesn't have.
Do you even have a dog you want in the presidential race? Nope. Not really. Not really. The closest thing like I've had in terms of like actually like really genuinely supporting a candidate, the closest candidate I've had to like really supporting like full-heartedly was Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. In terms of like presidential races. Like I did not want Hillary Clinton to be the nominee. I did not want Biden to be the nominee. So you don't want the US to have a president? That's not what I said. You asked me if I had a dog in this fight, or in this race, and I said no, because I don't care about any of these candidates. The RNC chooses a candidate who their base coalesces around. The DNC chooses a candidate who bends the knee most to the donor overlords. That does not mean that I want the U.S. to have a president or not. Which, by the way, like, you know, if the office of president didn't exist and could be divided and flattened into a more horizontal format, then that would be okay with me too.
10 million views. This thing's got 1.2 million likes, and some people are wondering,
what are they? I don't even. I haven't seen that.
They've not shown this to you. Okay, no. What they're trying to say with this is that in your boots you have heels.
No.
That's what they're trying to say.
Those are just standard off the rack Lucchese.
How tall are you? How tall are you, Governor? How tall?
5'11".
5'11". Okay. Why don't you wear tennis shoes and dress shoes?
Brutal. Just absolutely brutal. And the irony here is that the man who everyone is accusing of wearing high heels is the same man who banned drag in Florida. And to add another layer to the cringe, he is presumably wearing high heels because he is insecure about his height. It's just so humiliating. Like, this is actual cringe where you feel firsthand embarrassment for somebody else. But these embarrassing moments that kept coming were all self-inflicted. Remember, there was the report about him eating pudding with his fingers, which was pounced on by Donald Trump's teen, who then subsequently turned that report into an ad, not to mention his beef with Disney that blew up in his face in the middle of his campaign last year. But aside from all of the embarrassing moments, he also...
That's a question, is the GOP warping the executive branch already? Well, so is the Democratic Party. So is the Democratic Party.
Made a lot of oopsies during his campaign. And to be clear, when I say oopsie, I mean go full Nazi to the layperson. For example, he was forced to fire a staffer who made a video of him using Nazi imagery. His team also released ads bragging about his fascist policies that he produced that went viral because of how scathing the criticism was that he chose to boost. And I was in some of these ads, literally. Just produced some of the harshest, most draconian laws that literally threaten trans existence.
What's your reaction to that video?
You know, it really feels like we're living in the Twilight Zone sometimes, not just because it's very bizarre to see yourself in an ad for a presidential candidate, but because the presidential candidate is taking clips where people are saying he's a bad person, and then they're boosting those. They're saying, look, this is what they're saying about him. Vote for him. He's a bad person, see? What? That is the dumbest thing imaginable. Now, I think that Tim Miller of The Bulwark put it best when explaining the absurdity of these...
Well, it's because it's not for the normies. Mousander, welcome.
Viral ads. He writes, given the context, the inclusion of Figueiredo's line about how DeSantis' policies literally threaten trans existence is deeply disturbing. That this line would make it into a product put out by one of the leading contenders for the presidency is a scandal. It ought create a total and complete repudiation from the campaign just to have any hope of surviving. Say what you will about Mitt Romney's 47% gaffe, it pales in comparison to suggesting that you want to pass laws that literally threaten the existence of a marginalized class of Americans like it's a good thing. And I completely agree with that. I mean, imagine how the right would react if a Democratic candidate, for example, featured a critic in an ad who accused them of threatening the existence of Christianity with their policies as if that were a good thing. They would lose their minds. But when it comes to trans people, DeSantis is basically boasting about the fact that he's a monster and he wants to own it.
Because that's not that was a targeted campaign towards like Nazis. Okay, that was a far right campaign. Okay, leading candidate. Well, at one point he was threatening for a moment there. He had a moment. Okay, maybe that was written. Maybe that was written during his during his high point.
Own it. But that type of language, like this cruelty, is not going to resonate with people outside of Florida, or it's not going to work as well as it does in Florida. And part of the reason why he was successful in Florida is because in his own state, he can have this perfectly controlled, curated image where the media and the government in that state is on his side. But I mean, the second that you leave Florida, this image that you try to project, it falls apart. And to make matters worse, he shit the bed entirely and ran a terrible campaign. So that's why everything kind of crumbled around him. Now, what's even more astonishing is the fact that the media wanted to prop up DeSantis at the start, because even though liberal pundits, for example, might not necessarily like him, they prefer him to Trump because they view him as less dangerous than Trump, even though I disagree with that. But with that in mind, you would think that there would be some level of trepidation from liberal pundits, at least after he announced the end of his campaign. But not really. They were basically like, yeah, this guy fucking sucks. And their insight into why he lost was actually spot on. So I want to give you a couple of examples here.
The political obituary is almost too easy to write. He was a bad candidate. He had a lousy...
Surely MAGA Christians outweighed trans people to 20 to 31. I don't know. I know that trans people are like point something. Like definitely under 1% of the population.
Message and a truly terrible campaign. But maybe it wouldn't have made any difference because this says so much about the Republican Party as well. He calculated that if he moved to the right of Donald Trump on the cultural issues, that somehow he could be Trumpism without Trump. But the problem is the Republican base wanted Trump. They wanted the show.
You have a choice. You have to pick a lane. And Donald Trump had the MAGA lane, had the extreme MAGA lane. And so here you had Fat Elvis, 77, and you had Ron DeSantis saying, I'm going to go to Vegas and I'm going to fill that lane, right? Why? Like, if you can't, if that lane's already filled, then do the Beatles. If you can't do the Beatles, do Dylan. If you can't do the Dylan, be Fifth Dimension. Be anybody. But don't try to be Fat Elvis. They got that on the Strip.
A lot of it.
They got a lot of it.
Ron DeSantis spent a lot of time in the run-up to the primaries and caucuses getting underway, going after wokeism, going after targets like Walt Disney. And at the end, he went from Space Mountain to It's a Small World. I mean, it just did not work. And I wonder, does that message really just not resonate with Republicans as much as maybe folks think on social media? And
all this media sewage is just another argument for reducing presidential election season from infinity to maybe 1 year only. Yeah.
The sort of towel-snapping corners of the far right, it just doesn't resonate with voters.
No, that's exactly right, especially here in New Hampshire. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the live free or die state. We like government to be smaller and out of the way, let businesses run themselves. And that was what was always fascinating to me is that, I think Ron DeSantis and his team early on may have misread the room. They kind of thought their support was going to come from the hardest of hardcore Trump supporters, when in reality, he was picking up a lot of the non-Trump supporters, the non-Trump voters, folks who were a little bit more centrist or even center-right. And yet he was still moving to the right to try to outmaneuver Donald Trump ideologically for Iowa. They made this miscalculation early on in the campaign that somehow they had to, deal a death blow to Donald Trump in Iowa, which is a caucus state, low turnout affair. The hardest of hardcore party activists participate in it. And so in order to try to even have a chance there, they had to move to the right, which really killed all of his appeal to the independent voters and then moderate Republican voters he would need in a state like New Hampshire, where you do have a plethora of other voters to target that aren't so committed to supporting Donald Trump. And I'll just add one other quick thing. The other thing we don't talk about enough is that Ron DeSantis tried to say, I am Trump without the drama. and that I can beat Joe Biden and he'll lose to Joe Biden. Well, the electability argument went out the window when poll after poll started showing that Trump was leading Biden in a lot of these key swing states. A lot of voters said
Scarborough is probably more responsible for Trump's success in 2016 than any other media figure.
Well, if that's the case, I'm not going to go with New Coke. I'm just going to go with the original because I seem to like that enough, and that guy I think can win.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything they're saying here is perfectly reasonable, and I think it's funny to see mainstream media drag somebody who was really appealing to the mainstream because he was this alternative to Trump. But to this point that he tried to be Trump without the baggage, well, the editorial board of the Miami Herald in his home state obviously explained specifically why he failed after being poised to be the person that was supposed to save the GOP from Trump. They write, it's not just that he was steamrolled by Donald Trump. DeSantis never appeared to want to save the GOP. He was more interested in making it a more ravenous, angrier, and intolerant party. That worked for Trump, but didn't work for the governor with all the charisma of burned toast. Goddamn, they are dragging the shit out of him. But it's well deserved. Now, it's not just that he came off as inauthentic and lacked charisma. He also just ran a bad campaign, full stop. Or as Politico put it, his campaign team ran the worst campaign in history. And they argue, start with an indisputable.
Doc has it going, but that will never happen because cable news makes all its bank from distraction, and there's no bigger distraction than election horse race where they can vomit pointless poll info in between all the candidate gaffes and reporting on congressional inaction about everything. Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Fact. At the beginning of 2023, Governor Ron DeSantis was in first place, ahead of former President Donald Trump. Then acknowledged that the DeSantis campaign and Super PAC raised more money than any other campaign, including that of the former presidents. Many in the GOP billionaire class gushed over DeSantis, promising to spend whatever it would take to vanquish the former president. What could go wrong? Well, everything. And the article goes on to talk about his lack of strategy and whatnot, but this paragraph in particular that explains why the hype died down is especially ruthless, and I want to read it to you. Quote, the candidate did not match the hype. He was less than advertised. In person, he was a diminutive politician. The campaign introduced him to the nation as a bright but socially awkward introvert, a nerd who did not enjoy people, which was a problem since voters tend to be people. Now, in my opinion, it's not just that he's socially awkward and introverted, because there are many people who I know even who are socially awkward and introverted who don't come off the way that Ron DeSantis comes off. In my opinion, not to play armchair psychiatrist here, but I'm going to do it anyway, he comes off as a sociopath, if not outright psychopathic. And I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic. I mean, I think he literally might be a psychopath. I think that it's reflected in not just his behavior and his personality, but in his priorities and policies as well. It's not just that he has no regard for the pain and suffering that he inflicts on people in his state, but he seemingly relishes in it. And this makes him a bad salesperson for fascism, because in order to win over the normies, which is the goal if you want to be president, fascists have to convince the masses that the stakes are much greater and there's some sort of an existential threat that they have to oppose. And he just didn't construct that narrative or any narrative at all, nor did he have the ability to sell it, even if he wanted to, even if he had a narrative. So Americans just kind of saw him as this weird-ass dude who was kind of annoyed by wokeism. And even if maybe they thought that wokeism was annoying too, well, he's not the guy who they went with. Donald Trump had the entire base on lock, and normies went with Nikki Haley instead, seemingly.
All heel, no toes.
In the Republican side, if you consider any Republican to be a normie at this point, which is debatable. But even though he couldn't win over Americans, he did win over one person.
Before we begin, I'd like to take time to congratulate Ron DeSantis and, of course, a really terrific person who I've gotten to know, his wife, Casey, for having run a great campaign for president. He did. He ran a really good campaign, I will tell you. It's not easy. They think it's easy doing this stuff, right? It's not easy. But as you know, he left the campaign trail today at 3 p.m., and in so doing, he was very gracious, and he endorsed me, so I appreciate it.
He couldn't even denounce Nazis marching in Orlando. Yep. Just never did. Never did, by the way.
He did it. He managed to win back Daddy's approval, and because he kissed the ring, big things are happening. For example, Trump made this announcement to
Wonder if he'll go back to pronouncing it DeSantis.
Ward Ron for being a good boy.
He just said, will I be using the name Ron DeSanctimonious? I said, that name is officially retired.
Wow, look at that. Oh my God, Ron. He's moving up in the world. He's no longer Ron DeSanctimonious. What about Meatball Ron? Are we retiring that one?
And there it is. Look, it may seem trivial to the rest of us who aren't in this cult, but Trump giving DeSantis the opportunity to redeem himself after being insufficiently loyal to him by running against him gives him the opportunity to still have a career. Without Trump's blessing, that might not be a possibility. He might lose his next reelection in Florida. Now, this is
so magnanimous of him.
Gonna help him with the right? Maybe in the...
Wait a minute. He can't run anymore for Florida, right? DeSantis is done, right? Like, he can't run for governor anymore?
Future, Trump giving him the green light to continue to be a Republican politician might help him in a future GOP primary. But I think that he shit the bed so bad that I can't imagine any future presidential campaign not being DOA, because you have to win over more than just Republican fascists. And he didn't just not do that. He made so many embarrassing mistakes that I feel like he just can't recover, right? So I'm glad his campaign is over, but...
The way Trump says it would be mean to call him nickname. I'd never call him nickname. No? Magnanimous. Magnanimous. There you go. Welcome, Carpet Packs. James Napper, he can if he comes back. There has to be a break, I believe, in terms. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But as Melanie DeRigo put it, it shouldn't be, because he should be forced to carry his campaign to term. Precisely. We should force him to endure the pain and humiliation even longer.
True. He still has a background in torture, so DeSantis will be fine. All right, this one, we're just going to take like 5 seconds to do. Federal Appeals Court lets Trump gag order stand in the federal January 6 case. The Federal Appeals Court in Washington, D.C. declined to rehear arguments over whether former President Trump can be prohibited from talking about witnesses and court staff while he awaits trial in the special counsel's January 6 criminal case. Trump has unsuccessfully tried to challenge the gag order placed on him by Judge Tanya Chutkan late last year through appeals. The 11 judges from the D.C. Court of Appeals on Tuesday declined to touch the case after a 3-judge panel previously upheld the gag order against Trump. And there's no statement or dissents made by any of the judges. So, yeah. Vermont becomes latest state to propose well taxes. Look at that. How long can a Florida governor serve? A Florida governor can do 2 consecutive 4-year terms before having to step down for the next election. There's no lifetime limit on the number of times a candidate may be elected. The governor is elected by popular election every 4 years, according to the state constitution. Gotcha. Yeah, I believe James Napper got it. 7 states tried but failed in 2023 to add new tax on assets and income. Attempts are underway in at least 10 states this year, and proponents are optimistic about the chances. Lawmakers in Vermont are introducing legislation this week that would impose new taxes on the state's wealthiest residents, joining a growing national campaign being pushed by Democrats who believe that the measures will gain traction as states reckon with post-pandemic budget squeezes. One proposal in Vermont would tax people with more than $10 million in net worth on their capital gains, even if the gains have not yet been realized. Another would add a 3% marginal tax on individual incomes exceeding $500,000 a year, a measure that would support that supporters contend could pump $98 million, or almost 5% of the annual budget, into state coffers. To underscore the bill's importance to the Democratic leaders who control the legislature, both are being sponsored by State Representative Emil Kornshire of Brattleboro, who chairs the Ways and Means Committee. Quote, the way our tax structure is set up, our middle class is carrying an undue burden compared to the folks at the top. said Ms. Kornheiser, who plans to detail the legislation at a committee hearing on Tuesday and a news conference on Wednesday. We want to make sure that all Vermonters are paying their fair share. The package of bills are part of a broader push by the country by progressive groups who hope that the political moment has arrived to shake up the tax system to address income inequality. Called the Tax Justice Initiative, the campaign began in earnest a year ago when legislators in 7 states, including California, New York, and Washington, coordinated the introduction of bills mirroring the federal wealth tax proposed by Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts during her 2020 presidential campaign. None of those proposals got out of committee, but this year, with Vermont, Pennsylvania, and possibly other states joining the fold, organizers are redoubling their efforts to advance bills to the floor and then passage. They hope that the frustration over escalated cost of living and resentment over the many breaks afforded to the ultra-wealthy will coalesce into a political groundswell. Quote, "We know it takes more than one single session for big ideas to take root," said Jesse Ulibarri, a former Colorado State Senator who's now co-executive director of the State Innovation Exchange, one of the groups pushing for the new bills along with the State Revenue Alliance. Policymaking is the act of taking the impossible to the inevitable. Many Republicans and Democrats have long resisted expanding the state taxation of individuals beyond income to include assets as well as some of the new bills proposed. Doing so in an election year may be even less appealing. If only you could get to New York to adopt that, then you could accelerate a wealth tax nationally. Governor Gavin Newsom of California recently rejected the idea of plugging the state's $37 billion budget deficit with a wealth tax. Republicans say California's progressive income tax is already too onerous for high earners, and Mr. Newsom, who fashions himself a fiscal centrist and is widely believed to have presidential aspirations, have resisted adding new state taxes. Texas voters overwhelmingly passed a constitutional amendment in November that would preemptively bar any future efforts by the state to tax wealth or net worth. Phenomenal. Thanks, Texas. Democrats in Vermont have a supermajority in the state legislature, but even so, they've also faced a difficult sales job. The governor, Phil Scott, is a moderate Republican who voted for President Biden in 2020 and was scheduled to deliver his budget address on Tuesday. Though the state is likely to face a tightening budget, Mr. Scott has been cool to suggestions that the wealthy be taxed more. "We have a pretty progressive tax policy in the state here already," he told reporters. "I'm not sure how many more of the wealthy there are and how much more we're going to reap from them without them moving." That's just nonsense. Still, when it comes to taxes, the biggest frustration many Americans have is a sense that the wealthiest aren't paying their fair share. 82% of the respondents in an April 2023 Pew Research poll said it bothered them, including 60% who said it bothered them a lot. Some of the ultra-wealthy agree. More than 250 billionaires and millionaires, including heirs to the Rockefeller and Disney fortunes, recently signed an open letter coinciding with the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, that urged world leaders to tax them more. The vast majority of state and local tax, that means nothing. Like, that means absolutely nothing because, like, let's be honest, it's the very same wealthy people and capital that drive lobby to make sure that doesn't happen. The vast majority of state and local tax systems taken as a whole include property, sales, and excise tax, as well as income tax, are regressive, and the poorest 20% of taxpayers pay effective tax rates that are nearly 60% higher than those paid by the top 1% of households. According to new research from the Institute of Taxation and Economic Policy, a nonpartisan research organization that equates fairness with a progressive tax system. So far in 2024, lawmakers in 10 states have introduced wealth tax bills or working on introducing them, according to Amber Wallen, a senior policy and outreach director at the State Revenue Alliance. They are California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maryland, Minnesota, Nevada, New York, Pennsylvania, Vermont, and Washington. No states currently assess any taxes on a living individual's net worth or unrealized capital gains. If Vermont's bill were to become law, it would basically do that, Ms. Kornheiser explained. Someone whose assets after exemption started the year worth $10 million and finished the year worth $11 million, for example, would have that $1 million in unrealized gains that would be counted as income and therefore subject to Vermont's top income tax rate of 8.75%, even though nothing was sold and the gains were all on paper. Whether any of these state proposals, if enacted, would withstand legal scrutiny remains to be seen. The Supreme Court is now weighing a case that could redefine what constitutes income and potentially complicate efforts by lawmakers to impose levies on billionaires' wealth. Opponents in Maryland spent $250,000 in ad campaigns at the end of last year to bolster support for proposals that they contend could produce $1.6 billion in annual revenue. In Connecticut, whose legislative session does not start until February 7th, lawmakers are preparing to unveil updated proposals, said the state representative Kate Farrar, the deputy leader of the Democratic majority in the House, who represents the West Hartford and Newington areas. One new proposal tackles something that federal lawmakers have failed to do, closing the carried interest loop, which allows hedge fund and private equity executives to pay tax rates that are lower in some cases than those paid by entry-level employees, which is wild. Some legislators and taxpayers are pushing back. In the state of Washington, conservatives, not some legislators, conservatives hope they've collected enough valid signatures to ask voters in November whether the state capital gains tax should be repealed. The tax, which was approved by Democratic-controlled legislature in 2021, assesses a 7% excise tax on realized capital gains of more than $250,000, excluding real estate, and generated $900 million in revenue in 2023. There's still a lot of economic unease across the country, and there's a populist mood in the U.S. right now, both on the right and left, that can help drive some of these conversations, said Jarek Walczak, the vice president of state projects of the Tax Foundation, a nonprofit tax policy which has criticized wealth tax proposals. The problem is that feelings can make for bad policy. He said, "Well, it may feel good to increase tax on the very wealthy, but that may mean they no longer have the capacity to invest in." Oh my God, I love how this article ends on this. Right, you got to give it to the New York Times for ending it on this way. It may feel good to increase tax on the very wealthy, but it means that they no longer have the capacity to invest in growing companies that generate employment and create opportunity in this country. Phenomenal meme. No, that's not how that works at all. An 8% tax on the uber wealthy, on the top 1%, is not going to take away their capacity to invest in companies or whatever. This is nonsense, okay? All right, folks, give me 1 second, and we're going to finish off with this story over here. Just give me 1 second. You had your 1 second. Oh man. Sorry about that. I may have lied about the 1 second, okay? I may have lied about the 1 second. It may have been like, 20. All right. Ohio pastor charged for housing the homeless in his church sues the city in a federal lawsuit. Yes. Very good system we have, you know? Very good system where if you choose to attempt to house, to provide housing, apparently that's a really big problem. Apparently. An Ohio pastor was charged with zoning violations for housing people experiencing homelessness, has now filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Bryan and its officials. Earlier this year, Pastor Chris Avale decided to keep the doors of his church, Dad's Place, open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to reach out to the city's most vulnerable. Bryan is a small city of about 8,600 people, 65 miles west of Toledo. In December, Avale was hit with 18 zoning violations by the city, which claimed that he had violated a city ordinance that says residents can't stay on the first floor of that property. Further, the local fire chief found a slew of fire code violations at the church. Yeah, okay, whatever, dude. Avale pleaded not guilty to the charges in his January 11th arraignment, according to online court records. Now he's suing the city, claiming discrimination on the basis of religion and claiming the city officials have launched a harassment campaign against the church. Yeah, unironically, like actual Christian values, but like it's not even about, in my opinion, this story isn't even about, the fact that it's a pastor or a church or whatever. It's about how ridiculous it is that, it's the same concept about how ridiculous and asinine it is that you could literally get into hot water for feeding the homeless. And now this person is facing over a dozen, zoning violations and whatever, because he's trying to provide housing. The city argues that Avale had been given time to comply with the ordinance after receiving warnings, but apparently refused. The only reason this is still an ongoing fire/safety concern is because Chris Avale ignored the city's notices in the fall, hence forcing criminal charges related to the zoning. Avale's federal lawsuit was filed on Monday against the city of Bryan, Mayor Carrie Slade, Bryan Police Department Captain Jamie Mendez, Bryan's Planning and Zoning Administration Andrew Watterson, and Bryan Fire Chief Doug Poole. Dad's Place has operated in the city for the past 5 years and in March decided to open its doors 24/7. The church housed and fed those who needed a place to stay for months without incident, with an average of 8 people staying a night, according to the complaint. However, the city of Bryan offered a conflicting account, saying that in a news release that the police department saw a spike in calls for service in May of 2023 regarding inappropriate activity at Dad's Place spanning criminal mischief, trespassing, overdose, larceny, harassment, and disturbing the peace and sexual assault. Yeah, the police, very well known for telling the truth. Very well known for not making up bullshit, right? The city became aware that Dad's Place was housing people in November, the release said, noting that doing so was unlawful because housing people at the church violated a city ordinance that prohibits residential use on the first floor of any building within the C3 zoning district, which the church was located. On November 3, Bryan city officials issued Dad's Place a cease and desist letter, giving it 10 days to stop operating 24 hours days or face legal penalties. The letter warned that failing to comply would result in criminal misdemeanor charges, which carry a penalty of $100 to $500 and up to 6 months in jail or both. The city said that in ordering Dad's Place to stop housing people, the city offered to assist in placing any persons living or staying there. A complaint said the church was bewildered by the cease and desist letter and reached out to city officials to see how it could continue operating in compliance with zoning laws. Pastor Avale called Watterson to ask how the church could proceed with its ministry to the homeless, and Watterson said they could seek a zoning variance or conditional use permit, but that the city would deny such request, the complaint said. Avale also allegedly reached out to Mayor Slade multiple times but never got a reply. The city said that after receiving the November notice, Avale requested conditional use permit to allow continued residential use on the first floor and was informed that such use was prohibited and could not be approved. Dad's Place refused to kick out those who staying at the church, seeing it as directly contrary to its religious obligation. The complaint said in turn the city allegedly engaged in a campaign to harass, intimidate, and shut down Dad's Place, the suit contended. The city said in its release that a fire code inspection in November led to the discovery of 18 violations, several of which were serious and potentially endangered the lives and safety of those in the building, such as improper laundry facilities installations, inadequate or unsafe exit areas, and limited ventilation. Had to be some of the actual churchgoers who reported it? Maybe. After the first fire code inspection, Chief Doug Poole wrote a letter to Bryan Police Chief Greg Ruski recommending criminal charges be filed against Avell for the church's alleged violation of the city's zoning ordinance. The city officially filed 18 separate criminal charges against Avell on December 18th. Avell allegedly learned about the charges through a local newspaper. After Avell was served with the charges, the city repeatedly attempted to harass and intimidate the church by visiting the property under false pretenses and claiming congregants were panhandling or using illicit drugs. Further, the city keeps changing the goalposts and the solutions the church must comply to satisfy the fire codes. In one case, the city ordered the church to install a hood over the stove in the kitchen. The church complied. Then the city demanded the church install a different hood and get an inspection from the state of Ohio before the city would be satisfied. Re-inspections for fire code violations in January found most of the violations were resolved, but as of January 16, 5 haven't been properly corrected, and Avell was cited for those. During the January 16 re-inspection, Poole found a gas leak, and during the same visit, Poole saw 20 people who had stayed overnight at the church, the city said in a statement. The city also alleged threatening to charge the church's landlord if the landlord did not evict the church from the property. The suit alleges that the city's action violates the church's right under the First Amendment and Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment that forbids discrimination on the basis of religion and religious land use and institutionalized persons, and the Institutionalized Persons Act, which says the government may not impose a land use regulation that imposes a substantial burden on religious exercise. The suit also includes a motion for a temporary restraining order against the city. Pastor Avell standing strong in his resolve despite the charges. In a sermon streamed on the church's Facebook, he said, "Sure, we could build a 24/7 homeless shelter out of town, but together we could build a 24/7 sanctuary inside of town." Jeremy Dice, a senior counsel for First Liberty, one of the lawyers representing Avell in the case, said in a statement that instead of prosecuting a pastor in the efforts to drive congregation from her site, Mayor Schlade should be supporting a church trying to care for the marginalized in their community and in the dead of winter. The constitutional and law demand nothing less. Meanwhile, Bryan's city attorney, Mark Fischel, defended the city's action, citing significant safety issues at Dad's Place. These violations of the fire code noted by Bryan's fire chief created a clear and immediate danger to the occupants of Dad's Place, whether transient residents or merely visitors to the facility, he told NBC News. There are also apartments on the second floor of this building unrelated to Dad's Place. In a statement, the city had said it had been accused of failing to support the homeless in addressing the issues at Dad's Place. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, a homeless shelter in the sanctuary homeless shelter that fully complies with zoning code and fire codes operates next to Dad's Place. The city works cooperatively with this shelter on an ongoing basis that serves its population well while doing so in a safe and legal manner. Yeah, I don't know. Personally, I think it's bullshit. If you want to give help to homeless people, the city, the government shouldn't be intervening in that. Okay. Very cool system we have where we can penalize people for trying to house the unhoused. All right, folks. It's about that time. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you all for the new follows. Thank you for the subscriptions, biddies, all that awesome stuff. Thank you, Cosmopolitics, for the raid. Again, please, if you have a second, go to twitch.tv/Cosmopolitics. Go give her a follow. Go also follow her on Twitter as well. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. It really does help us out. Yes, also go follow Mouselander. Yes. See a little diamond in chat? Go follow Mouselander. Carpet Packs as well. Thank you all for hanging out. I appreciate it. Thank you, Michael Hassler, for keeping the chat chill. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. It really does help us out. Like the YouTube stream. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And don't forget this Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You may join the Discord and we'll have a movie night. As always, folks, thank you all for your support. Please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. See ya. Hang tight, folks. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye. See you, Zeoduke. Thank you for joining.